The new approach was introduced to local teachers today, who saw it in action through practical demonstrations and via a teaching video. Every infant, primary and secondary teacher in New South Wales will get a copy of this document, which is being hailed as the most influential reform since the Wyndham scheme of the 1960s. Under the new curriculum, writing will not be taught in isolation from practical work. It suggests that for children to be good writers, they must also be good readers, attentive listeners and articulate speakers. As part of the K-12 approach to writing, a new handwriting standard will be introduced based on the foundation style. It replaces the old ball and stick approach and will be presented to children at the earliest stages of their education. The changes are the result of more than 5 years' consultation and revision.
There has been a deterioration of language skills in school-aged children. Is this an admission that perhaps it wasn't the right way to go about it in the past?
I don't think there's ever been a deterioration of skills. Perhaps some people have perceived there's been a mythological golden age of spelling. If you get into the classroom and see the work that the children are actively doing, you'll find that that is actually a misnomer, that children are spelling and writing now under this new system much more than before.
Is grammar still important? People perceive that grammar is no longer being taught in the schools. Is this a revolutionary approach to grammar?
No, grammar has always had its place in the classroom. What we're doing now is relating grammar in a much more meaningful way to the writing that children are doing and giving them purpose for changing their thoughts and learning grammar.
Citrus fruits are some of our best sources of vitamin C, and just one orange will give you 2 days' supply. And of course they've got a lot of other vitamins and minerals as well. One of the lovely things you can do with citrus fruit is make marmalade. We're making
the
a marmalade
one-hour video
from
contains
lemons,
26 fresh food recipes and stars one of Australia's leading nutritionists, Rosemary Stanton. Produced in Newcastle, it covers recipes from avocados to bananas to celery and mushrooms, blueberries and Brussels sprouts. Entitled Summer Delights, it will be the first of a number of seasonal tapes. President of the organisation, Kevin Robson, admits that it is an aggressive approach to marketing.
Well, we felt that the product that we've got has got so much nutritional value, and it's certainly been backed by the medical profession, that we're fighting basically against the wrong foods to eat as far as people are concerned. We feel that with promotion we can get our message across better.
But the video is only the first of a two-pronged attack on unhealthy eating habits by the organisation.
We're putting this container here into the schools free of charge, that we would like them to display the material, and in turn they can buy their fruits and put it up there for the young children to buy a piece of fruit instead of, say, potato chips or something like that, which is more benefit to them.
Dozens of drums of detergent ruptured after spilling from the back of a semi-trailer just south of Swansea this morning, giving motorists a few anxious moments before police closed the lane to begin a tricky clean-up. While fire tankers flushed away the biodegradable detergent, local council workers poured sand over the slippery surface. Police say the accident caused only minor traffic problems and the affected lane could be reopened within hours.
The state opposition leader began the local election campaign by launching a scathing attack on what he described as the Labor government's monopoly of political power in the traditional safe seats of the Hunter. The 10 endorsed Newcastle and Lower Hunter candidates are Linda Donovan, representing Swansea, Alderman Peter Wilson, Walls End. In the Lake Macquarie seat, Val Samuels, MLC Virginia Chadwick, Newcastle candidate Alderman Ashley Saunders, Ian Crook, representing Wyong, and Judith Lloyd, vying for the seat of Charlestown. town. Absent from last night's launch was Bob Scott, candidate for the new seat of Port Stephens. Mr Greiner says he believes Labor voters are deserting the party, and it's now up to the Liberals to push for a change for the better, the theme behind the Liberal campaign. Predicting a March state election, the opposition leader says the Hunter will focus strongly in Liberal policies.
I simply ask the people of the Hunter to look at the performance of their local member, to ask whether they really believe they're getting value or whether they believe that a change would be better, whether stirring them up would be better, whether changing the one-party monopoly that has, from the 1980s, effectively been the situation in the Hunter as far as state politics goes, whether that wouldn't be a good thing. And I don't see how you, if you're fair dinkum about it, how you could come to a conclusion other than that this area would be very well served if the Labor Party could no longer take it for granted.
Across the region today, thousands of Year 10 students graduated from their junior high school studies. Principals handed over their certificates, marking the end of an era in secondary schooling. Next year, the Certificate of Secondary Education will be introduced. Unlike the school certificate, the replacement will show all educational achievements and will be awarded to students aged 15 and over in any year at the time they choose to leave school. And if a student decides to return, they will be encouraged to pick up where they left off.
If a student decides to leave school at the end of Year 9, they will be given a Certificate of Secondary Education, but they may re-enter the school system and update their certificate at any stage. Of course, this will have to be negotiated with each principal. We are going to
Clive
give
Hughes
each
is the regional field officer for the new Board of Secondary Education. He says the new certificate will be fully operational by 1991, and it will not only be the students that benefit from the new process of recording educational achievements, but also prospective employers.
We are going to give each student, when they get their CSE, a package, and that package will be a sort of folder, and in that folder will be their certificate, will be their transcript of their achievements in each year. We will encourage schools to put in that their school reports, their work experience reports, any merit certificates, any document which can record achievements for students in schools which employers might like to look at to get an all-round picture of the student they wish to employ.
NIB Falcons had a dismal season last year, and they're determined not to have a repeat performance this year. Part of the Falcons' fresh look is new coach Ken Cole, who has the reputation as the most successful coach in the Basketball League. He won National Coach of the Year in 1986. Ken is determined to get results and says he already has the team training harder than they have ever worked before. This year there are a number of new players, including midget Derek Polk, originally from Ohio State University, who at 213 centimetres or 7 foot towers over his contemporaries. Ken is adamant that he can build the New York Falcons into a winning force by the beginning of the season in February.
Well, I think the amount of work that we're going to do is going to make a significant improvement. I mean, we'll be on the court 7 days a week, 2 hours a day. Just about every player in the team is working out on weights with Lee Jensen every day for an hour and a half a day every second day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So it's a full-scale commitment to success this year, and I think the results will be good.
Army, Navy and Air Force personnel from throughout Australia have been competing in the championships at Singleton. It's the one time of the year service parachutists get together to select a 4-member team to represent them in civilian and overseas competitions. The 65 competitors include 3 local men. They are Tony Maurer from Taree, Steve Zenos from Maitland and Paul Wasson from Redhead. Competitors have been jumping from as high as 10,000 feet
in 4 and 10 member formation events and individual style and accuracy competitions. National Safety Council freefall cameraman Shane Sparks captured the spirit of the championships from the air. A Safety Council team has also been competing.
They're currently the Australian champions in four-way relative work and have recently returned from the World Championships where they were placed 6th. And one of the aims of the competition is also to improve the standard of parachuting within the services. And so we're basically picking their brains and they are assisting us in raising that standard.
Singleton was chosen to host the championships this year for several reasons.
We needed a location that offered the facilities that were available here, with an airstrip obviously close handy to the accommodation area as such, and the weather is very good around here. Plus there's sufficient support from the other army units located quite close to enable us to run an event such as this.
However, you have had a few problems with the wind this week. What sort of effect has that had, and has that jeopardised Singleton's chances of holding it again in the future?
No, at our annual general meeting last night, in fact, we decided that unanimously Singleton was our choice for next year.
Today's training run is the first and only for the team as a whole before the interbranch is held next Sunday. The team is made up of 39 boys and girls, aged from 10 to 13, who have been selected from the 11 clubs in the Newcastle branch. The beach sprinters and R&R competitors went through their routines in the park opposite Nobby's Beach, while the water competitors did their stuff at Horseshoe Bay because of today's dangerous surf conditions. The Newcastle branch finished in 2nd place last year and are hoping to go one better next week. A New South Wales team will be selected at the conclusion of the Coffs Harbour Carnival to compete at the National Championships at Freshwater next month.
The fight to establish a cardiac surgical unit in the Hunter has been a long one for the local branches of the Open Heart Association and the Combined Pensioners Group. A public meeting at City Hall attracted nearly 500, mostly elderly citizens, to push the campaign further. Figures last year show that around 350 patients were forced to travel to Sydney for surgery because no facilities were available in this region. The National Heart Foundation says the Hunter has the highest incidence of cardiac deaths in Australia, but the Chief Executive of the Greater Newcastle Area Health Service, Dr Owen James, disagrees. The meeting sought to gain support from Dr James, but he says wrong information has been given out, and while agreeing that the Hunter has 15% more cardiac deaths than the state average, says this region is not the highest. This is not the only argument against a regional cardiac surgical unit.
We'd like to see a cardiac unit established here, but on good, clear justification. And that justification involves the expenditure to be on sufficient numbers of people, to be cost effective and to have clinical excellence.
Dr James said that plans for the new teaching hospital at Rankin Park specifically included cardiac surgical facilities for beds, operating theatres and post-operative care.
We have the capability to do cardiac surgery at Rankin Park if it is justified.
And when will it be justified? When will the figures get that high?
On current trends, I would think that without committing anyone, they will be likely to have cardiac surgery at the new teaching hospital during the early part of the 1990s.
With the area's health administrator clearly placing greater priority on care for the aged and mentally ill, the Assembly unanimously voted to take the matter further. A delegation representing all associations concerned will seek a meeting with Premier Unsworth to gain his support.
Rescuers held out little hope for the 11-year-old boy. Paramedics on the scene gave Alvaro Garza only a 5% chance of recovery. He'd fallen into the icy North Dakota lake and had been underwater for 45 minutes before rescuers scooped him out of the icy water.
Here it is. Got it. Get it. Move the ambulance right away. Sure, you're going to do it again, boys. Get over there, pull it. Okay, go. Take care.
After paramedics worked frantically to stabilise the boy at the scene, he was rushed to hospital. Today, he's showing a dramatic improvement, responding to physical stimulation and the sound of his name. Meanwhile, in California, a policeman has been shot and killed by a gunman following a 13-hour siege. The gunman was fatally wounded after he ran out of his hiding place under a barrage of gunfire. He'd been released from custody only days earlier on a weapons charge.
South Newcastle was sponsored last season by Carpet City when they made their way to the grand final. And once again, Carpet City will be sponsoring the club into the 1988 Newcastle League season. The company's managing director, Ray Knight, says with the Newcastle Knights playing in the Sydney competition next year, sponsorships such as those from Carpet City would help ensure the strength of the Newcastle competition.
There's been some talk about the demise of the district competition in Newcastle. We wouldn't like to see that happen. We'd like to, along with sponsors of other clubs, be sure that the district clubs can be used as a breeding ground for young players who eventually may go on and play in the New South Wales competition with the Knights or whoever. But if we can help to keep these clubs strong along with other sponsors, we'd feel as though we've done a pretty good job for Newcastle and South Newcastle.
Brian. He also announced a new perpetual trophy and medal for the club, dedicated to Newcastle's best-known player, Brian Carlson, who died early this year.
Well, Brian and I were mates for a very, very long time, and as most people, anybody who knew Brian, if they were being fair, they couldn't find a bad word to say about Brian, plus the fact it would be a shame if something nice wasn't done for probably the best guy that I've met, and probably the best footballer I've ever seen come out of Newcastle, or as a matter of fact, the best footballer I've seen play anywhere in my life.
As distinctive as the six-star labels is the lady employed by the Department of Energy to promote EnergyWise, Consumer Advisor Helen Wellings, who was on hand at today's politician-studded ceremony at City Hall.
Just about any organisation that hasn't had an energy management program can look at saving sometimes substantial costs in carrying out programs. Sometimes it's a very simple operation. It might involve changing from one gas or electricity tariff to another.
The imminence of the state election was illustrated by the fact that Treasurer Ken Booth devoted a large part of his keynote address to industry representatives and politicians to payroll and land tax changes to be introduced next year. Mr Booth also mentioned the contentious issue of gas prices, but would only say an inquiry is underway to report not before March. The Treasurer said the region spends $1,600 million a year on energy, $230 million in homes and private cars, $1,370 million by business.
These are vast figures, and the developments and benefits which come from getting value for these energy dollars are correspondingly great. A 10% improvement in energy efficiency across the board would provide an extra $160 million to invest or spend. The Hunter is the home of the most energy-intensive group of industries in Australia, and for many organisations, energy is the largest controllable cost.
And those costs are controllable if the example of industrial galvanisers is any indication. Spokesman Chris Muncaster said the EnergyWise principles have led to big energy savings in his business.
We've installed some waste heat recovery equipment. That is saving us about $36,000 a year at the moment. We regularly tune our furnaces with the help of new gas, and that has made our equipment, increased our efficiency by about 20%.
As far as the ordinary householder is concerned, savings can be made by taking up cost options on electricity charges, and pensioners can gain from the CARES scheme. Everybody can gaze at the stars on appliances. The more stars, the more cost efficient. Dishwashers and water heaters will join fridges and air conditioners on the scheme next year.
Police and detectives descended in force on suburban Henry Street, sealing off the murder victim's small cottage early this morning, while shocked neighbours watched. An intensive search of the house and grounds began in a so far fruitless hunt for a murder weapon. Police say 58-year-old house painter Tanasi Talib received a severe head wound after being struck with a heavy object, probably sometime between 10 o'clock and midnight last night. Grief-stricken relatives were at a loss to understand the motive for the slaying. Neighbours say the Yugoslavian handyman, better known as Tom, was a likeable man who'd lived on the street for several years. Police began door-to-door interviews in the hope that some new information would come to light, but again, very little has been established. Detective Sergeant Doug Bentley says the theft of a car from the same street overnight isn't thought to be associated with the death.
Well, at this stage, we'll leave our minds open at that, and we'll work on both those leads, see if we can bring them together. But at this stage, there's no indication that might be the reason for the car being stolen.
There's any suggestion Mr. Talib lived alone in the house. He was divorced with 3 grown-up daughters who regularly kept in touch. Late this afternoon, police were asking for public help in their inquiries. They want to hear